Chapter 7, Sport Mass Media, Convergence and Shifting Roles. One of the key words here for this chapter is convergence. And we're going to talk about that quite a bit. The learning objectives, I've got them listed on a couple of slides here, but here are the main ones I want to take a look at. Understanding what media convergence is. I want you to become a little bit aware of the history of sport media, and particularly newspaper, sports sections, and then how diverse multimedia and electronic mass media has become. At its basic level, the word media refers to a variety of means through which communication takes place. You know that. And sport mass media encompasses reporting and commentary on sport. Now, one of the things that came to my mind here, we talked about correlations about a week ago, how we may not be talking about cause and effect, but one situation influences another. And when we have that situation or action, we know that something over here is going to happen. It doesn't explain it all the times. But one of the correlations here is that sport mediated, sport media, collegiate sport is correlated to collegiate sport revenue. Would you agree with that? Would you say that there is a correlation? Would you say it's connected? Is mediated sport reporting correlated somehow to collegiate sport revenue? Grant, how is it correlated, do you think?
I mean, it's heavily covered by the media, so especially in Division I, so they're going to get a lot of revenue.
Okay, so it's heavily covered by the media.
Yeah.
And what's wrong with this stadium here?
It's empty.
Nobody in it. There's Ohio Stadium empty. They got 105 seats, 105,000 seats, and nobody there. And so on October 24th, when Nebraska comes to town, now it's not going to be that nobody's there, but there's no fans there. At first they thought they might be able to put half the fans in. Then maybe 20%. Now, 0 fans in all the Big Ten stadiums. I mean, there'll be media, there'll be coaches and players and trainers, but other than that, the stadium will be empty. How do you think that affects their revenue? Is there a positive correlation there? Can we say it's cause and effect? I think we're pretty sure we can do that. Gene Smith said they're going to lose $100 and some million, $120, $130 million in revenue, in sport revenue. Did you hear something interesting I read? Gene Smith said they're going to borrow money from the university so that they can remain self-providing, or usually, like at Mount Vernon, and just about 95% of every college in America, the college has a budget for athletics. And they pay for everything, and there's a little bit of revenue from stuff, but not much. There's maybe a dozen schools in the country that are self-sufficient, primarily from football and men's basketball. They pay for all the other sports. And Ohio State is one of them. So Gene Smith says we're going to borrow that. And then when things get better, we're going to pay it back. It's an interesting concept. They want to stay self-sufficient. So if we want to talk about sport communication, what's the message there? I see a couple of messages there. One, Gene Smith doesn't see this going on forever. He anticipates that they will return to self-sufficiency. He believes that the university has the money to lend them. And I don't think they have actually cut any sports yet. There have been some schools that have, but he has every intention of providing for all the sports. There's some interesting messages in the fact that he is going to borrow money. You know, there's a lot of schools that right now they've cut sports. I mean, schools that you never would expect that to happen. And what sports are they cutting, by the way? Anybody know what's the trend of sports being cut right now?
Just know Furman University in South Carolina cut lacrosse and baseball, and I think one other spring sport.
Okay, lacrosse, baseball.
Maybe softball.
There's been some cross-country teams that have been cut, golf. Now, are these, first of all, are those revenue sports? No. They don't make any money for the college. Do they cost a lot to operate? Well, baseball might. I mean, you know, they got a big roster, they travel, they got a lot of equipment. What about cross-country? Hardly cost a thing. Well, what's the biggest costing sport in every school? Football. So why aren't they cutting football? What's the message there? Well, it's our revenue sport. It's our culture. Go back to culture again. We can't cut football. And now there's a Title IX issue in there too. We won't get into that, but they're still looking at trying to, you know, you have to, Title IX, the way that they try to satisfy Title, there's three ways to do it. And the way that the large schools try to satisfy it is through the proportionality criteria. The percentage of students. What is anybody know the percentage of male, female at Mount Vernon? I don't believe it's 50-50, is it? Would you say it's more like 60-40? Okay, let's say 60-40, 60% female, 40% men. If we went by the proportionality criterion to satisfy Title IX compliance, 60% of our student athletes would have to be women and 40% men. Give or take a percent. Now, I don't know what the numbers are here, but I'm guessing that's not what it is. And if we go to a larger school that has any school that has football, it's definitely that. If you've got counter sports. See, football has no counter sport for females. Soccer, basketball, volleyball, maybe volleyball for men. But football, what do? You got 100 players, maybe 120, and if we're gonna try to make it even at all, we're gonna have to cut men's sports to even it out. And that's why, from a Title IX position, that's why they cut men's sports. What's the message there? It's kind of it's kind of a non-verbal, if you will. It's saying we're all about money, and we can't cut football because that's where our money comes from. That's where our revenue is. That's where who gives money to the college. Okay, beat up that enough. Sport media convergence. Well, convergence occurs when media platforms intersect. When you have a simple platform, here, let me use this as there's a statement I thought was really interesting in your text. It says that all print sport communication is sport publishing, but not all of sport publishing is print sport communication. Now, here's a Venn diagram, if you will. Okay, so here's all sport publishing, this outer circle here. In here is sport print publishing. Well, all of that is considered sport publishing, but there's a lot of different sport publishing that is not printed. And when we have convergence, it means that they intersect. And an example would be a newspaper writer writes a story and it's in print, but then he or she thinks, well, I've got to get this out to more people, so I'm going to take advantage of Facebook, Twitter, you name it, so you converge into other forms of media. You don't get rid of the one, you keep it, but you see the value in converging to other platforms. Now let me give you an example I thought of this last night anybody ever watch Antiques Roadshow? Antiques Roadshow. Where people come on the show, they bring their things that they have collected over the years that they don't know what they're worth, that grandma gave them, and they have experts come and they tell them, well, that's not worth a dime. Or, well, this dates back to so-and-so, and I would say that retail price would start at $5,000, and they paid $1.25 at a garage sale. Okay, Antiques Roadshow. One of the things that they showed last night in this Antiques Roadshow was this, I don't know, some kind of a ceramic vase or something. And it had this interesting relief picture on it. And the guy said, you know, this vase by itself isn't worth much. And the work of that artist, you know, it's so and so, but if you put them together. Another example was somebody came on with a sheet of paper with a heading at the top, some record company. But it was signed by John Lennon, as well as somebody else. And this person said, you know, this sheet by itself is worth nothing. But when you put John Lennon's name on it, it's worth something. Well, I began to think about sport communication and how that relates to convergence. And I've got a couple examples here for you. Now, I don't do this actively anymore, but at one time I was quite the collector of track and field autographs. Now, some of these pictures on here aren't worth anything by themselves. But if you stick the name on it, for example, here's a more recent one. In '96, Tim Mack from the United States, who's from Westlake, Ohio, won the pole vault and set an Olympic record, 1906 and some change. Well, I know Tim, and I saw him, and I had this newspaper article about him, and I said, Tim, sign this if you will. So this newspaper article is worth really nothing. There's millions of them out there. But with him signing that, all of a sudden the message changes because I have converged media. I have printed paper, and then I have somebody actually giving me a message, actually autographing it. You know, most of these people you would know about, but there's a lot of world record holders, former world record holders. You've all heard of Carl Lewis, probably. His signature is here. The former world record holder in the long jump, Bob Beeman, who's extended the world record over almost 2 feet. His autograph is there, and various others. And by themselves, these pictures don't really mean a lot. Here's some others, the one right in the middle. Kip Keino. All right, Kip Keino was probably the very first famous Kenyan distance runner. Olympic champion, went on to become quite the humanitarian. He runs an orphanage for orphans in Kenya. But this picture of him, they're a dime a dozen, but this has his autograph on it. Worth a little bit more with his autograph. Here's a Moscow Olympic ticket right here in the middle. Now, since I have one and didn't go to that, it's obviously not worth that much because there's a lot of them out there. But it was signed by the '68 Olympic champion in the decathlon, Bill Toomey. And I could go on and on here. People that you don't know and are not interested in. But you get the idea. Convergence of multimedia. The one I wanted to show you, I couldn't find. It's an autograph of Jesse Owens. We talked about him in here. He won 4 gold medals in Berlin in '36. How do I have his? I had a program from a banquet that was associated with a track meet I was in after high school, and he was a speaker. We all sent our programs out to him. He signed them all. Well, that program, there's 100 of those floating around somewhere, but I'll bet. Well, there may not be 100 floating around because not everybody kept them. But mine has Jesse Owens, and that's, you know what? They don't make that autograph anymore. He died. So that makes it worth a lot more. Convergence of multimedia. That's the concept here. All right. I don't want to bring this again on Thursday, so I might as well tell you now. One of the types of media that's listed in the text has to do with books about sport. Okay, in high school, I don't remember reading anything out of our school library but this one book. Now, I didn't steal this from the library. This is another copy. But I remember reading one book from that high school library. It was called The Jim Ryan Story. Jim Ryan it was current at that time. He was the first high schooler to break 4 minutes in the mile. And they wrote his biography just practically while I was barely still in high school. But it was the first book I ever read in that library, to my recollection. An example of sport books. Do you read books about sport? Besides newspaper, do you read books? I mean, there's biographies, it's just another part of the multimedia that we're looking at in this chapter. All right, that's where we're going to stop. Appreciate your attention. We'll finish this chapter up. Make sure that you have turned in chapter 7 quiz. And I've received some quizzes that I haven't done anything with yet, so if you turned it in and you don't see the grade on the grade book yet, that's why. Thank you. See you around. Okay. Thursday? Okay. Playing basketball.
What's that?
You playing basketball?
Yeah.
Where'd you go to high school?
I'm from Indiana. I went to Plymouth High School.
Okay.
And, Scott Skiles.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Really?
that's kind of how I explain it to people.
Yeah.
Here, kind of the idea.
Okay. Cool.
It's about like 20 minutes from Notre Dame,
Okay.
just outside.
Yeah. All right. How's practice going?
It's going well. We've been hitting the ground running ever since we got here. So this is our last week of preseason, and then we have our first game on site is either last week of October or first week of
Cool.
yeah.
Yeah. perspective.
I appreciate it.